Welcome everyone to Justrillmedia's House of Dragons episode review. We'll actually be doing a review of the entire season, but in this particular case, we're starting off with episode 1. And again, I want to go ahead and give a huge spoiler alert. So if you haven't already watched the first episode and you plan on doing it, then you might want to stop this immediately. However, if you've already saw it, and you're just looking for some great content as far as the review of the show, or if you want to actually listen to a review before you watch it to have some firsthand or some backhand information, rather, however you like to word that, then this is definitely the channel for you. So I just want to welcome everyone to this review. Now, the season starts off with a great council meeting, and it informs us that the old king, as they refer to him as, or Jaharis, is getting old, and both of his sons have died. And they are at the height of their power as of right now. The Targaryen regime has about 10 adult dragons, or approximately 10 adult dragons, and they've had about 60 years of peace and prosperity. Now, people from all around the realm have came to this great meeting to see who he will name as his successor. Now, it basically boiled down to his two oldest descendants, a male whose name is Viserys Targaryen, and a female, Rhaenys Targaryen. And of course, um, it was given to the male, which was Viserys. And with that, there was a lot of speculation, and well, as you'll come to later to see in the show, a lot of people it almost split the realm, so to speak, because they felt the more qualified one of the two would have in fact been the princess, which is Rhaenys. And but of course it was given to Viserys. And now after this, the story takes place 175 years before the death of the Mad King, and of course my baby Daenerys before she's born. Shouts out to Daenerys and her fine ass. You know, but once this great council meeting has concluded, we're now introduced to Princess Vanera, and that she's actually the one who's narrating that beginning story. So it comes in from her point of view as far as everything, because she states that the crown was given to her father, which of course is Viserys. Now the show is stunning visually. I love what they did as far as with the dragons. It definitely looks to be a step up from the original Game of Thrones. So I like it in that regard. Let's see here. So we're introduced to her. She comes in flying on a dragon, much like Daenerys, but this particular dragon's name is Syrax. And so she comes flying in, and of course they greet her, and everyone's kind of worried about her. Her little bodyguard. He's like, well, every time you come back, I'm just so thankful because it prevents my head from being on a spike. So it's clear to see that she's important, and early on we clearly see that the show is outlined specifically for her. Now, Vanera she's a strong-willed woman, to say the least. She wishes to buck traditions. She'll definitely put you in the mind of an Arya Stark. From her own mouth, she said that she would rather serve as a knight and ride off in glory rather than just be one to bear a child. And at this point, we're introduced to her mother, which is the queen, also known as Emma. And shouts out to Emma, that's my mother's name. And her mother, in this particular regard, represents tradition. And of course, she's trying to groom Venera in the ways of a um, upper echelon female, if you will, or a privileged female in that particular time, trying to groom her in the ways of tradition. And she lets her know that, one of these days that you will be in this position. And I failed to mention that Emma is pregnant. Now, this is very important because the king, Viserys, he doesn't have an heir at this point. So he desperately wants an heir. And you'll see later on in a conversation that him and Emma have that, she almost feels as if she's failed him by not providing a male heir, much like often, well, a lot of women in those times. Of course, this isn't a realistic tale, but oftentimes your womb was considered to be cursed if you weren't able to bring forth a male child. And so, they definitely followed the lines of tradition as far as that goes there. And, the conversation between Vanera and her mother is one of where her mother's just trying to groom her. She sees her pregnant. It's um, a hard labor, if you will, as far as carrying the child. And so, she's trying to get her rest. She's just trying to take it easy. And of course, Venera doesn't like this. She definitely doesn't want to be in this position. She much rather take the reins of an Arya Stark, if you will. And so, now, as we continue to go on, we find out that the king actually has a sore on his back, and it refuses to heal. And we also find out about the king that he's very passive. You can see this, all throughout. He's very kind of just happy-go-lucky. He looks as if he's almost struggling with the idea of being a king and the authority that comes with it. You don't see him operating in this role too often. He definitely wants to keep the peace amongst the people. And this is evident once his brother, Daemon Targaryen, actually comes back into the picture. And so the first time we see him, and this could be a bit of foreshadowing, we see him, he's been gone for quite some time, and he's actually seated on the Iron Throne. And he comes in, and Basira actually comes in and greets him, and you can tell that she's fond of her uncle. Like she kind of looks up to him, and you can tell this. And so from this point, Damon, he goes on, the commander of the City Watch, and he comes in, and we're introduced early on. We find out that he's very bloodthirsty. I mean, this part really kind of didn't make sense to me, but he comes into the Red Keep in an attempt to reestablish order. I guess the Targaryen name was becoming synonymous with being soft, and so he comes in, and every criminal or would-be criminal is killed in a very vicious way, to show his authority. And he believes his brother to be weak, which he'll confront him and tell him about later on in the show. But it looks as if, in all accounts, that he's said to be the Mad King, later on in the show, because, I mean, you can tell early on, they had to cart off all these body parts. I mean, he's slicing off penises. Man, he's going crazy. He came in, he just went crazy. And so, next, the next setting is almost, they're having another council meeting. The hand of the king, something Hightower, they have, you instantly see animosity between him and Damon. And so as he's actually walking in, he's kind of telling the king, like, this can't go on, this type of impunity. He's going around, he's doing whatever, like, this is not what we stand for, this, that, and the third. But he ends up, Damon's actually in the room when he comes in, and you can clearly see that he has command over the room. His brother just kind of seconds him and, like, well, hopefully you don't do it in that capacity again, but, I'm not really mad at what you did. And so we clearly see like the dynamics of their relationship here. From this point, we find out that nobody likes the ladies of the Vale, and I'm confused. Is every woman of the Vale, is everyone ugly? Like I remember back in Game of Thrones, the sister that Littlefinger was having sex with, like, and he threw off the he threw off the ledge. Um, you know, they just kind of has like their name. They have a negative connotation associated with them, like to be some lame women or something. Because, um, Damon, his wife is actually a woman of the Vale, and he just kind of despises her. You can tell he rather spend his time in brothels, just having sex and doing things like that. But so we see that here also. And then the next, or the biggest, one of the biggest scenes in the first episode, will be the city games. And of course, here Viserys, he announces that, to the people that that Queen Emma is in labor. So we see that. And it's a big to do. But during this time, so they're kind of going back and forth, and of course, there's a lot of violence involved here, but almost simultaneously, they've intertwined the birth of the child with the games, and so this, in my opinion, was absolutely disgusting. It really made my stomach queasy because they had to do like an emergency C-section, and they showed all of it, like completely unnecessary, in my opinion. Like I really just found myself, and again, you know, I'm not weak of stomach at all. Like I definitely don't mind seeing blood or anything like that, like in real life or something, I don't mind it. But this was just disgusting, like how they was showing it, how they saw it going in, and basically, and before I say that, he basically had a decision to make because he was advised that both of them would actually die if he didn't make a decision, and consequently, he ended up losing both of them anyway. So he performed the C-section, which in essence kills his wife, and they take the child out. He is only alive for a few hours, and then we come to find out in the next scene that the child has died also. And so obviously the king is distraught about this, and um, after a brief ceremony where his wife is basically cremated by Cyrax. They send her off. On this show they like honorable death. They burn the body on the little heap of sticks and all that. And so yeah. So outside of that, we go to the next scene where the king is immediately prompted by the council, as far as, what are you going to do as far as an heir is concerned now that you don't have a child, your wife is gone, basically your house is in turmoil. What are you going to do? And so they're advising them, they're like, you have to watch out for your brother. He may try and kill you and take the throne, this, that, and the third. So, um, the king, this is just too much for him to handle. And obviously, he looks as if he doesn't have what it takes to be king because he's sitting there crumbling at the seams around everybody, and he's showing it. He gets so emotionally distraught that he actually leaves out of the council meeting, and he storms out rather, and then only to find out that his brother was in a brothel, somewhat in celebration of this. Now his brother was clearly conflicted, but part of him was in fact happy to know that he almost felt like it was destined for him to be the heir to the throne. And so once King Viserys finds out about this, he's outraged, because he's always had his brother's back. In his mind, he's always had his brother's back, and they have a full-blown confrontation. Um, and once they have this confrontation, he ends up being banished. He banishes his brother, um, you know, to it makes him leave the kingdom. And so in the final scene, we see Damon flying off on Dragonback, and he has the biggest dragon out of everybody. His dragon looks like Dracarys, big old red dragon. So he flies off, um, you know, into, well, I won't say the sunset, but he just flies off, and um, the king actually, before he flew off, he informed him that he will be making Vanera the heir to the throne. And so it leaves off with Vanera being crowned heir to the throne and everyone pledging allegiance to her. And the king somewhat schooling his daughter as to what is to be expected, although he doesn't have any idea typically what she can expect. He just kind of lets her know that, one of the biggest secrets that they think that the winter is coming, which came later in the Game of Thrones, the actual show. But it's obvious that they're prepping for that even now. And so that's how it leaves off, and basically you see a coronation, so to speak, for Princess Vanera. And so she's been, put at ease because that was her biggest thing. She felt like she was going to be overshadowed by the birth of her brother. And so she felt like she wasn't good enough. And so, it kind of has a happy ending for the first episode. and sets the stage for the rest of the season. Now, a few takeaways from the show. To me, it definitely appears as if a feminist um, wrote this, so to speak. It's very geared towards men being incompetent, so to speak, or if not incompetent, then just brutish and bloodthirsty. And it looks as if the society is looking to oppress the woman, and that she has to rise up and almost be a hero of the show. It's for any masculine man out here, it doesn't really you really don't have a character that you can kind of confide in. I think the first Game of Thrones was so good because each character there was something on there for everyone. But as I'm looking at the show, I really didn't find any characters that I could identify with. I didn't see any supremely intelligent man. Although they do have a black guy on there, he's kind of weird. He's a little weird, and it looks like he just the puppet to his wife. And so I really don't like him in that regard. There's nobody like a Tyrion. Nobody just smart and that outwits everyone. Nobody on there to that effect that I've seen so far. But of course, that is my review of episode one. That's it in the nutshell. If you receive something differently from the show, definitely jump in the comment section and let me know. To me, it was a lackluster um, first episode in comparison to Game of Thrones. I was immediately captivated. No more than I would say this after the second episode of Game of Thrones, it was a wrap. Like, okay, yeah, well, I'm finna binge. I'm finna binge watch this. I'm locked in. So again, this was just the first episode, so we'll see. And oftentimes you have to set the stage for everything. So it could take off and just, begin to go crazy. But in my opinion, it was somewhat of a lackluster, um, you know, opening episode. But that's just my opinion, of course, and my review of everything. But definitely jump in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. Definitely subscribe and hit that like button as well. And until the next episode, you guys take care and be blessed. One.